All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Robert Greene Book Club. And this chapter today is about how to confuse desire and reality. This chapter will teach you how to make someone pretty much the key to making them become obsessed with you. Okay, so we're gonna be watching this video, and I'm gonna give you guys my take on it, and we're gonna be stopping it, and obviously I'm gonna skip over the story because I actually we're gonna see what you guys think of the story. All right, and I'm gonna get a complete confirmation in this video whether or not this is something you guys might like, or if you guys want me to just to just edit out the story and make it more like straight to the point. Okay, all right, let's begin this.
Chapter 14. Confuse Desire and Reality, the Perfect Illusion. To compensate for the difficulties in their lives, people spend a lot of their time daydreaming, imagining a future full of adventure, success, and romance. If you can create the illusion that through you they can live out their dreams, you will have them at your mercy.
Yes, 100%. For example, if a woman wants to get married and wants to have kids, and she really wants it, and this is really fucked up, a man will present himself as this viable suitor, right? If a woman is looking marriage, you represent yourself as someone who could provide that marriage, and they're gonna fall for you, right? If you're a dude and you're looking for some fun, and a woman gives you the impression that she's willing to provide you that fun, the guy's gonna fall for you. Ladies and gentlemen, this happened to me. I dated this Egyptian girl, and we were gonna travel the world and hook up with girls. Honestly, that was the plan. We did that for like a few weeks, and my God, was it fun. And then the pandemic happened, and she had to stay in her country, you know. But for 2 years, I was thinking of her, and and I think one of the main reasons why is because she represented that. She represented somebody who could fulfill my fantasies, right? And it may not be true love, but it's also in the love aspect, right? Because that's just physical things. Where if somebody wants a true connection, and you give them the impression that you could give them that connection, give them that love, give them that life of love where you both travel together. And if she travels, she most likely is looking for a man who wants to travel. All people have a certain fantasy about their love lives, and if you look like a compatible partner in that fantasy, they're gonna fall for you, even if you're not. And I don't agree with lying to people, but people will lie to themselves also.
It is important to start slowly, gaining their trust and gradually constructing the fantasy that matches their desires. Aim at secret wishes that have been thwarted or repressed, stirring up uncontrollable emotions, clouding their powers of reason. The perfect illusion is one that does not depart too much from reality, but has a touch of the unreal to it.
Yep. For example, I have a lot of people who watch my channel that are minorities, Hispanics, Black people, Indians, Chinese, not Chinese, and white people. They're there too, right? It's like I think it's like 30% whitey, and a lot of Black people's fantasy is reparations, and so a lot of politicians actually play up on that fantasy. Another example is people who experience racism tend to develop racist point of views, because whatever you're a victim of, you could also become a victimizer, someone who hurts people with the same tool that was used against you. So then you have political demagogues who preach to Black people that the white man is evil, the white devil, you know, is here to take your money, is here to attack you, is here to, you're the reason why your life is not, he's the reason why your life sucks, right? And so they create a straw man, and they give you a fantasy of a future of, if you are like me, I will give you the power that you've lost, right? And because it's a suppressed desire, and because it's something that's actually real, and if you say it the right way, it seems achievable. Saying, oh, you just take money from this person, from this rich corporation, and then we'll divide it amongst all of us. Like, honestly, you people who are not in that group may not believe what I'm saying, but I'm just saying that if you're in that group, you will believe anything. You will believe. The key is finding their deepest desires, finding their disappointments, and presenting yourself as the one who could provide them the fulfillment of that future, right? And again, it's funny because it's funny, like with the Robert Greene book club, I do relate a lot of the things that I talk about. I do interpret it in a political way a lot because I think this book is much more. It's much more. It's much. It's a better book. It's a book that's much easier to use if you want to win elections. To be honest with you, but actually, I'm actually getting away from the topic. Let's keep listening.
Like a waking dream. Lead the seduced to a point of confusion in which they can no longer tell the difference between illusion and reality. Fantasy in the flesh. In 1964, a 20-year-old Frenchman named Bernard Boursicot arrived in Beijing, China, to work as an accountant in the French embassy. His first weeks there were not what he had expected. Boursicot had grown up in the French provinces, dreaming of travel and adventure. When he had been assigned delivery, he explained that his mother's first 2 children had been girls, enthralled by the story, and also Russia. It was so cold there, perhaps he was dead. She showed filled Boursicot's life, the alluring Pei-Pu, the thrill of being a spy, and Russia. It was so cold there, perhaps he was dead. She showed Boursicot photographs of the boy, and he did see some resemblance. Over the next few weeks they managed to meet here and there, and then Boursicot had an idea. He sympathized with the Cultural Revolution, and he wanted to get around the prohibitions that were preventing him from seeing Pei-Pu, so he offered to do some spying. The offer was passed along to the right people, and soon Boursicot was stealing documents for the communists. The son, named Bertrand, was recalled to Beijing, and Boursicot finally met him. Now, a threefold adventure filled Boursicot's life: the alluring Pei-Pu, the thrill of being a spy, and the illicit child whom he wanted to bring back to France. In 1972, Boursicot left Beijing. Over the next few years, he tried repeatedly to get Pei-Pu and his son to France, and a decade later, he finally succeeded. The 3 became a family. In 1983, though, the French authorities grew suspicious of this relationship between a Foreign Office official and a Chinese man, and with a little investigating, they uncovered Boursicot's spying. He was arrested and soon made a startling confession. The man he was living with was really a woman. Confused, the French ordered an examination of Pei-Pu. As they had thought, he was very much a man. Boursicot went to prison. Even after Boursicot had heard his former lover's own confession, he was still convinced that Pei-Pu was a woman. Her soft body, their intimate relationship, how could he be wrong? Only when Pei-Pu, imprisoned in the same jail, showed him the incontrovertible proof of his sex, did Boursicot finally accept it.
Okay, so this story is actually kind of insane. It's a story of a guy who was dating a woman who was really a man. And because he was so in love with her, he convinced himself she was a woman. Let's listen to the interpretation. Holy shit, talk about confusing desire from reality.
Interpretation. The moment Pei-Pu met Boursicot, he realized he had found the perfect victim. Boursicot was lonely, bored, desperate. The way he responded to Pei-Pu suggested that he was probably also homosexual, or perhaps bisexual, at least confused. Boursicot, in fact, had had homosexual encounters as a boy. Guilty about them, he had tried to repress this side of himself. Pei-Pu had played women's parts before and was quite good at it. He was slight and effeminate. Physically, it wasn't a stretch. But who would believe such a story, or at least not be skeptical of it?
It's kind of crazy, right? Because this doesn't work if the person doesn't have a need to believe. If the person in that need to believe is a deep sense of dissatisfaction, a deep sense of unhappiness, And if this person desperately needs to believe, you could literally tell them you're a god and they'll believe you. But again, they have to be the right person, you know? If somebody really loves you, you'll be surprised how many things they'll believe about you. You know, I'm not encouraging that, but I'm just saying, I'm just giving you an insight into human nature, which is very fragile and not as rational as you think it is. Like, there's been a lot of things that I've believed that I was completely wrong in, or because I just wanted to believe it. And when you want to believe, your eyes have neurons to see things. When your brain wants to see something that's not there, your brain has neurons in the eyes to tell the eyes to see things that are not there, to deceive you.
Critical component of Pei Pu's seduction, in which he brought the Frenchman's fantasy of adventure to life, was to start slowly and set up an idea in his victim's mind. In his perfect French, which, however, was full of interesting Chinese expressions, he got Boursicot used to hearing stories and tales, some true, some not, but all delivered in that dramatic yet believable tone. Then he planted the idea of gender impersonation with his story of the butterfly. By the time he confessed the truth of his gender, Boursicot was already completely enchanted with him.
Mm-hmm.
Boursicot warded off all suspicious thoughts because he wanted to believe
it. That's the thing. And that's why people who are in cults have a hard time not believing. And even if the evidence is clearly showing you that you're wrong, because you want to believe. And all they need is the physical appearance that what they believe is true. You don't. The details can reveal that it's not true. But the physical appearance, which is in the physicality of it, and even in your certainty in how you talk, can convince people who want to believe. And the key is that they have to want to believe. Confirmation bias.
Pu's story. From there, it was easy. Pei Pu faked his periods. It didn't take much money to get hold of a child he could reasonably pass off as their son. More important, he played the fantasy role to the hilt, remaining elusive and mysterious, which was what a Westerner would expect from it.
This is why online relationships with fake women works on men and on women too, right? This is why the whole scammer of the Prince scammer who's giving you $1 million, people believe it because most likely the person who is in that situation, who falls for it, are desperate for that money. And I got scammed for weed one time, and he's like, send me the money and I'll send it to you. And I'm like, but I was so desperate for weed at that time that I sent it. Deep down, I knew it was a scam, but I wanted to believe it. And I did get scammed. But when you are completely satisfied, you don't have a need to believe for something. So you have an easier time being able to read bullshit. You know, people who get scammed are usually people who are greedy, who want more and who want easy ones. And also people who are, not that they're greedy, because when I say greedy, I mean they have enough, but they just want more. Also, that they're also desperate enough that they'll believe anything. They're desperate enough that they'll believe that you could say that if your mom died, I could resuscitate her. A lot of people, if they're desperate enough, they could believe it. And by believing in you, then they give you power. This is so interesting. This is so interesting, man. Like, am I the only one whose mind is being blown right now?
An Asian woman, while enveloping his past and indeed their whole experience in titillating bits of history. As Boursicot later explained, quote, Pei Pu screwed me in the head. I was having relations, and in my thoughts, my dreams, I was light years away from what was true, unquote.
I can't imagine like how some guys meet ladyboys or trans women, and they don't ask whether or not you're trans. Because they kind of know that you're not a woman, but they want to believe it, you know, because they're deep down they might be gay. It sucks. Honestly, it must suck to be secretly gay. Honestly, you know what I'm saying? Like, in terms of compassion's sake, it must really suck.
Boursicot thought he was having an exotic adventure, an enduring fantasy of his. Less consciously, He had an outlet for his repressed homosexuality. Pei Pu embodied his fantasy, giving it flesh by working first on his mind. The mind has two currents. It wants to believe in things that are pleasant to believe in, yet it has a self-protective need to be suspicious of people. If you start off too theatrical, trying too hard to create a fantasy, you'll feed that suspicious side of the mind. And once fed, the doubts will not go away.
Interesting, right? So he's saying, don't start too strong, right? That's very abstract. But I guess if you think about like a cult leader, the way they recruit, the way they slowly introduce you that they're God, they'll say, God exists. God is everywhere. God chooses people to manifest itself through. God chose me. I heard him. I died, and God replaced himself in me, and now I am God, right? For example. And so I guess you can't start off by saying you're God. Unless you're like Jesus and you just resuscitate someone instantly. Then they'll believe you, right? But we all know you're not doing that. You know what I'm saying?
Instead, you must start slowly, building trust while perhaps letting people see a little touch of something strange or exciting about you
A little
to tease
touch
their interest.
of something strange or something different about you. So that could be even maybe the way that you dress, even the way that you talk. And I believe you have an easier time achieving this if you're in a different country where you're completely different from everyone in terms of the way you dress, your clothing. And in fact, a lot of the best charlatans, their charlatanery is a lot more powerful whenever they're in a culture that's completely different. For example, I don't believe Buddhism is charlatanery, but remember the '60s, how the philosophy of the West was coming to the United States, and the gurus all looked like a bunch of like just gurus, right? What's his name? Osho, right? For example, they all had the look compared to white person in Cali, right? You know what I'm saying? They all look, and so when you see this, it's kind of shocking. And so just that gives you that advantage of looking strange. I think if you have your own weird, strange, sorry people, I think if you have your own weird, strange way of talking to people, of interacting, like your vernacular is different, the way you talk is different, then that will also give you that extra strangeness. And it will give you that bendiness to be able to bend all the way to something that's not real,
Then you build up your story like any piece of fiction. You have established a foundation of trust. Now, the fantasies and dreams you envelop them in are suddenly believable. Remember, people want to believe in the extraordinary. With a little groundwork, a little mental foreplay, they will fall for your illusion. If anything, err on the side of reality. Use real props like the child Pei Pu showed Boursicot.
So again, he was a man trying to convince him he was a woman, and he used a child, a fake, a child of someone else's, to make him think that was her child. She used fake periods, right? And those physical things, which is real, you could bend it enough and give it a different. It's bend it enough to fit your narrative, and people will believe it. And another example is I was reading about this cult leader a few weeks ago, how he had a woman. He paid her to tell people that he saw him stop, create rain. He saw him do miracles, heal people, resuscitate people. And you might say, okay, but why don't they ask them to do that right now? It's funny, right? That's not how people work. People are not going to ask for evidence, because again, you could also use a spiritual, along the lines of that, a spiritual thing to say, no, it doesn't work that way. For example, with, I believe in Christianity to a certain degree, so I don't, want to offend people, but they'll say, I have to feel the anointing of God. You know what I'm saying? God has to tell me to do it, and then if I do it, it'll happen. You know, that's an example. So you can see how any spiritual excuse, people will believe, and people just, again, they're just people don't question. They don't question things as much if they trust you and if they kind of can sense that there's something different about you. Just like how to start a call. What the fuck? It's crazy.
And add the fantastical touches in your words, or an occasional gesture that gives you a slight unreality. Once you sense that they are hooked, you can deepen the spell.
Right? A gesture could be like this. Rasputin. He uses his eyes as his gesture. He uses this as his gesture. But the important thing is the eye, the intense eyes. And people say his eyes were really, really intense, and it pierced through people. Right? Sorry, people. You'll see me in a second right now.
Go further and further into the fantasy. At that point, they will have gone so far into their own minds that you will no longer have to bother with verisimilitude. Wish fulfillment.
Yeah,
in 1762,
what he's pretty much saying is that if you do this the right way, people will just start like a wildfire spreading. They'll just start coming up with more things about you that you never even said you could do. You know, for example, if they believe that you have magical powers, for example, right, or they just say that they believe you're a god. That's just an example. You don't have to say that you could fly. You don't have to say that you could open the door by yourself. No, they're gonna assume that because that's what having godlike powers are, right? And the key is for you not to directly say that you are, but that let them come they let them come to that conclusion. For example, with Charles Manson, the people in their cult said Charles never said he was Christ, but he always insinuated that he was indirectly, right? And again, I am not here to tell you to do this. This is an extreme that I think you guys can understand the concept a little bit better. Right, I'm using something that I'm explaining this to you guys, and even though it is a little dark and very evil, it explains the concept. You know, because if you ever wonder why people follow cult leaders, why they believe the bullshit that they're saying, you're asking that because you just don't understand a part of human nature. That's all. That's what that means. If you understood this part of human nature, it will make total sense. And that's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to understand how those things work, so that then you could use that to defend yourself against those types of psychological manipulations.
Catherine, wife of Tsar Peter III, staged a coup against her ineffectual husband and proclaimed herself Empress of Russia. Over the next few years, in the 4 years that he had been governor of the Crimea, Potemkin had accomplished little.
This is the interpretation.
This backwater would take decades to improve. But in the few months before Catherine's visit, he had done the following. Every building that faced the road or the shore was given a fresh coat of paint. Artificial trees were set up to hide unseemly spots in the view. Broken roofs were repaired with flimsy boards, painted to look like tile. Everyone the party would see was instructed to wear their best clothes and look happy. Everyone old and infirm was to stay indoors. Floating in their palaces down the Dnieper, the imperial entourage saw brand new villages, but most of the buildings were only facades.
This reminds me of North Korea and how they were able to attract the South Koreans to stay in North Korea by building fake buildings. Or even how Dubai does with their buildings, where a lot of them are not that good. Or China, where a lot of it is just illusion and not reality. And I guess this is what you call like overselling something, I suppose. Yeah.
The herds of cattle were shipped from great distances and were moved at night to fresh fields along the route. The dancing peasants were trained for the entertainments, After each one, they were loaded into carts and hurriedly transported to a new downriver location, as were the marching soldiers who seemed to be everywhere. The gardens of the new palaces were filled with transplanted trees that died a few days later. The palaces themselves were quickly and badly built, but were so magnificently furnished that no one noticed. One fortress along the way had been built of sand and was destroyed a little later by a thunderstorm. The cost of this vast illusion had been enormous, and the war with Turkey would fail. But Potemkin had accomplished his goal. To the observant, of course, there were signs along the way that all was not as it seemed. But when the Empress herself insisted that everything was real and glorious, the courtiers could only agree.
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. For example, let's just say somebody's selling you drugs, right? And this is something that I do know that I've observed to myself. They'll be like, hey man, let's meet here and I'll sell you this much, right? Weed. And he was like, but don't worry, man, you could trust me. I got you, man. I don't scam people. You could trust me. Every time somebody says that, I'm not even gonna lie. There's a part of me that wants to believe it, so I kind of believe it. Like, because it's a dangerous situation. I mean, I personally I've never been mugged buying weed, but I'm just saying, it's a dangerous situation, so you're kind of skeptical. You're a little weary about it. Like one time I went to London and I got weed from these guys in the hood at fucking 11 p.m. It was 3 guys in the fucking shadows. Really stupid, but I got it right. But all you want to hear is you could trust me. Don't worry about it. You good. I mean, relax, bro. You could trust me, because people want to believe that they're gonna be okay. So they'll relax if you tell them that everything's gonna be okay. And it's almost like even like confirmation bias, pretty much, where people would rather go to the doctor that tells them there's a cure to your disease versus the one that tells them there's no cure. I know that's maybe there is a cure, right? But generally speaking, you want to hear good news, and people. That's why scams like, quick cancer treatment works so well, or we found the cure for cancer. Nobody wants to tell you. That's why it works so well, because it feeds into this. It feeds into this type of shit. Where people unfortunately they have cancer, and they wanna get this. They want to get it off, and so they're more willing to believe. This even reminds me, holy fuck, of when people lose somebody they love, like a girlfriend. A lot of people who don't believe in witchcraft will go to a witch to do a spell to get them to make the ex like them back. That, you know how common that is? That is so common. And a part of them does not believe it, but because they want to believe, they actually end up believing it. They have the need to believe. That's why, like, partners who are in a relationship that's abusive, they'll get abused by their partner, and the partners will tell them, I do this because I love you, because I want to help you. You don't listen. You're hard-headed. If you just listen because I love you, you would do it. This wouldn't be happening. This is for your own good. And so they'll believe it because they want to believe that this person that they love loves them back. Crazy shit, man. It's crazy shit.
This was the essence of the seduction. Catherine had wanted so deeply to be seen as a loving and progressive ruler, one who would defeat the Turks and liberate Europe, that when she saw signs of change in the Crimea, her mind filled in the picture. When our emotions are engaged, we often have trouble seeing things as they are. Feelings of love cloud our vision, making us...
I was literally thinking of this right now. The more you love them, the more easily you are to be deceived. The more you love them, the more blind you are. Yeah, the more you love them, the more deaf you are.
Us color events to coincide with our desires. To make people believe in the illusions you create, you need to feed the emotions over which they have least control. Often the best way to do this is to ascertain their unsatisfied desires, their wishes crying out for fulfillment. Perhaps they want to...
Or even to promise to fulfill those wishes. You know? Kind of crazy. So devilish.
See themselves as noble or romantic, but life has thwarted them. Perhaps they want an adventure. If something seems to validate this wish, they become emotional and irrational, almost to the point of hallucination.
Yep. And that's why they'll stay with the person that lies to them, that abuses them, all because they love them. And they choose to believe that they are the good side that they show, and that they are not the things that they actually do. This happens with parents. Oh my God, my son Bob, the teenager, killed 3 people. He's not a bad person. He's a good boy. That's because they love him so much. They have the need to believe that they are this angel they saw when they saw them give birth to them, right? And so not seeing that breaks their reality. So they'll believe the son that says, I didn't kill him. I know it's on video, but that's not me. The mother will believe that. You know, and this should give you empathy and compassion for other people's stupidity. And this should also give you empathy and compassion for your own stupidity, and for my own stupidity, where you believe the lies. You know, it's similar to that girl that I was dating. She let the ex who owed her money stay in her apartment. She did that knowing that he was playing her because she loved him. You get what I'm saying? That's what love does. Love will make you believe the little dark truth that's not real over the shining lie that they're presenting to you. Though you just focus on that, even though the lie is more obvious. Because your emotions narrow the scope of your vision. It creates emotional biases. You know? It's kind of insane, honestly. I mean, I know I'm smoking, but this is kind of insane. Honestly, this chapter is kind of insane. Honestly, this chapter kind of feels like how cult leaders make people believe they're God. It explains this. It explains why people get scammed so easily. It explains why you tend to be so gullible when you're in love. It's truly a eye-opening, at least even for me, to be honest with you. So if you guys want to check out the rest of this chapter, join the Robert Greene Book Club. The last one we did was Poeticizing Your Presence. And here we usually post 2 chapters per month. So if you guys want to become part of the Robert Greene Book Club, click in the description down below where you can watch the rest of this video. And it's only for $5 a month, people. $5 a month, you can get access to it. And we have a bunch of different bonuses and different tiers like that you guys can check out. Okay? Anyways, I'll see you guys inside. Take care.
Remember to envelop them in your illusion slowly. Potemkin did not start with grand spectacles, but with simple sights along the way, such as grazing cattle. Then he brought them on land, heightening the drama until the calculated climax when the windows were flung open to reveal a mighty war machine. Actually, a few thousand men and boats lined up in such a way as to suggest many more. Like Potemkin, involve the target in some kind of journey, physical or otherwise. The feeling of a shared adventure is rife with fantasy associations.
Okay. Taking them on a journey, huh? Very interesting. Going on trips, I guess. Sorry, I think the camera's a little off right now. There you go. Going on trips, but that's interesting. Journeys. You see, I learn with you guys too. I'm not just like talking like I know everything, but.
Make people feel that they are getting to see and live out something that relates to their deepest yearnings, and they will see happy, prosperous villages where there are only facades.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
Keys to seduction.
Honestly, I'm not even gonna lie, people. This chapter is genuinely mind blowing. Like. Because it makes so much sense, you know? It's genuinely one of the most mind-blowing chapters I've ever listened to in this book, because it explains why people are so gullible. It explains it. How people can believe things that you usually have to see with your own eyes, how people can believe it without seeing it. It's truly remarkable.
The real world can be unforgiving. Events occur over which we have little control. Other people ignore our feelings in their quests to get what they need. Time runs out before we accomplish what we had wanted. If we ever stopped to look at the present and future in a completely objective way, we would despair. Fortunately, we develop the habit of dreaming early on. In this other mental world that we inhabit, the future is full of rosy possibilities. Perhaps tomorrow we'll sell that brilliant idea or meet the person who will change our lives. Our culture stimulates these fantasies with constant images and stories of marvelous occurrences.
This is why manifestation is such a famous and followed type of like thing, manifesting, because it works, but also it promises everything that humans want, success. And this is the thing, is that a lot of people will misinterpret the true the true teachings of manifesting things. They'll see it from their lazy perspective and think that if you think hard enough about something, it'll happen. And they'll miss the greater picture that manifesting is all about you thinking about what you want, having an intense desire to do it, believing that you could do it, and taking action and learning from your mistakes, and you repeat that process of failing, learning from your failure, and then trying again while you apply the things you learned from your failure. If you keep doing that, it's gonna manifest. It's gonna manifest. It's how that process works. You could call it magical if you want. Oh shit! The wind, people. The door opened. Holy shit! I was like, oh my god, the cartel. One, the cartel member. So you can see how people can just be deceived by cults and and charlatans. It just blows my mind, honestly. I'm a little mind blown. I'm not gonna lie, people.
And happy romances. The problem is, these images and fantasies exist only in our minds, or on screen. They really aren't enough. We crave the real thing, not this endless daydreaming and titillation.
Yeah, that's why, for example, a lot of people like to watch these types of channels. Let me show you. They love watching videos of how other people live in different countries. Like, I love watching this, honestly. Like, there's a weird comfort of watching people live in other countries, like Americans moving in other countries. For example, living in Italy, American, small town, right? And one of the reasons why people watch these videos,
of course, the tight-knit community you're gonna get there
is because
basically a small talk every time you go
it's
there,
comforting.
the best prices and the best offers.
It's comforting, and they get to see how other people's live, and in their minds, temporarily they're able to escape and live there, or why people love to watch family couples, family YouTubers. They're able to sort of like live their family. If you have a bad family life, a lot of people will adopt them as their second family because maybe they're not happy with their own, or maybe they feel lonely. For example, like me, I remember I loved watching Italian like mobster movies, or even like The Sopranos. But I love watching scenes when they were eating pasta. I love eating pasta when they ate pasta, right? And I think that's because I always liked that, right? I never had. Well, I did actually. I was raised in a family we ate together, but I guess it means I want to do that again. So I watch that, and it makes me feel comfortable, right? So that's almost like the same thing, where you're getting a taste of the reality that you want through your fantasies, where people have friends online, and they may not have it in real life, but it's enough to fulfill your fantasies. It's enough to tickle that part of yourself.
Your task as a seducer is to bring some flesh and blood into someone's fantasy life by embodying a fantasy figure or creating a scenario resembling that person's dreams. No one can resist the pull of a secret desire that has come to life before their eyes. You must first choose targets who have some repression or dream unrealized.
That's the key. That's the key. It has to be someone whom you could fulfill something for them. If you're finding someone that's completely satisfied, you can't do this with them. And I don't think this could be used for evil, to be honest with you. Because usually most relationships satisfy something from each other. Right? And so and each person promises something. And that's to fulfill the fantasy of being a couple. But the problem is that a lot of people get with people who, what they provide, they don't need. And vice versa. They're only superficially, things usually fizzle out after a while. You know? So, for example, if I'm with a girl and she wants to have a threesome with another dude, she's out of luck. I'm like, girl, I'm the wrong guy. I'm the wrong guy. I'm telling you. You know, I'm not that guy for you. Right? It's an extreme example, but you have to find people who you could be their fantasy. So, for example, if I want to get a wife, I'll go where they're looking for someone that looks like me. An eccentric person that's dark-skinned, right? Where would you go? I would go to a secular white country or a secular South American country. For example, Mexico, right? Like, people here really love people who are dark-skinned here. And they like artists. So I fit their match, right? If you go to Europe, go to Amsterdam, if I go to Poland, any of those white countries, people, I fulfill it there, right? Actually, it's the exoticness, right? It's a little harder in the United States, slightly bit, not impossible, you know what I'm saying? But if I really want to have that grab that pound of flesh, like have a deep effect, you go where where your kind is not there, because they're fantasizing about you. I'm from New York. Oh my God, New York! I always wanted to meet someone from New York, right? They're fantasies, and you represent an outlet to New York City. I'm from America. Oh my God, I want to go to America, right? I'm joking around, but you guys kind of get the point, right? Or why poor people usually get scammed by pyramid schemes. Why the fuck you think they get scammed? It's not because they're stupid, but because their pyramid scheme speaks to what they want, what they need. People, this is honestly one of my favorite chapters that I think I've ever listened to in this book, because this is just hitting me like a thunderbolt.
Always the most likely victims of a seduction. Slowly and gradually, you will build up the illusion that they are getting. Seducer is to bring some flesh and blood into someone's fantasy life by embodying a fantasy figure or creating a scenario resembling that person's dreams. No one can resist the pull of a secret desire that has come to life before their eyes. You must first choose targets who have some repression or dream unrealized.
Like, if you're gay and a man is secretly gay, that guy's your perfect victim. If you're a girl and you want to be with another girl, meeting a lesbian is your perfect person, right? And you know, it's kind of interesting how that works, man. There's a certain attraction whenever we meet someone who represents what we want, what we secretly want. We are secretly attracted to them, but also nervous, and we kind of sabotage ourselves from actually following through. You know, because like a part of us wants to follow through, and a part of us don't. You know, and you may not want it when you get it, right? That also happens when the person gets what they fantasize about. They usually don't want it. So that's something you also have to be careful with. the disillusion, the disenchantment. In fact, this book has a chapter on that, which is beware of the after effects. But yeah, let's keep listening.
Really aren't enough. We crave the real thing, not this endless daydreaming and titillation. Your task as a seducer is to bring some flesh and blood into someone's fantasy life by embodying a fantasy figure or creating a scenario resembling that person's dreams. No one can resist the pull of a secret desire that has come to life before their eyes. You must first choose targets who have some repression or dream unrealized, always the most likely victims of a seduction.
For example, the ones that are willing to adopt a child are those who had the desire to have a child, right, and couldn't have one, right? This is honestly is something that you guys can really think of and apply in business, apply in everything. It really is. Let me know in the comment section. Am I exaggerating here? Like, because it's just I've never seen this. I've never seen or heard this from this perspective ever before.
Slowly and gradually, you will build up the illusion that they are getting to see and feel and live those dreams of theirs. Once they have this sensation, they will lose contact with reality and begin to see your fantasy as more real than anything else. And once they lose touch with reality, they are, to quote Stendhal on Lord Byron's female victims, like roasted larks that fall into your mouth. Mm-hmm. Most people have a misconception about illusion. As any magician knows, it need not be built out of anything grand or theatrical. The grand and theatrical can in fact be destructive, calling too much attention to you and your schemes. Instead, create the appearance of normality. Once your targets feel secure, nothing is out of the ordinary, you have room to deceive them. Pei Pu didn't spin the lie about his gender immediately. He took his time, made Boursicot come to him. Once Boursicot had fallen for it, Pei Pu continued to wear men's clothes. In animating a fantasy, the great mistake is imagining it must be larger than life. That would border on camp, which is entertaining but rarely seductive. Instead, what you aim for is what Freud called the uncanny, something strange and familiar at the same time, like a déjà vu or a childhood memory, anything slightly irrational and dreamlike.
Yeah, again, it's almost like people who say that they're Jesus, right? For example, let me show you this. Australia. All of the Jesus, you never see black Jesus looking black. Well, maybe you do. In Africa, obviously. Right? If you have a white dude and he goes to Africa and calls himself Jesus, they're like, no, you're not the black. You're not the white. You're the black. So you got to be a white guy. I mean, a black guy if you're in Africa. So let's look at the images right here. Sorry if it's pausing, people. I got to get in the computer. Man, where's that guy? The cult leader in this book called right here. Oh, here it is. Oh, look at that. Oh, yes. What are the chances, huh? What are the chances that you look exactly like the fucking Leonardo da Vinci painting of Jesus? What are the chances, bro? Like, the dude looks like Jesus. So that's the point, is that he doesn't have to fly. He doesn't have to walk on water to do any, no. All he has to do is look the part. Have something uncanny. What's the uncanny thing about him? The robe. The robe is the uncanny thing. Most people don't have robes. You know? Oh, look at him. He slicked his hair back. I bet that's how Jesus had it during that time. 1 second, people. Hello? 1 second. Hello? Dígame. So, let me give you another example. Again, it doesn't have to be insane what you have to wear. You know what I'm saying? Some of them don't wear that. I'm not telling you guys to be cult members, but I'm talking, like, for example, Erykah Badu. It's all about the uncanny, right? And this takes guts. That's the thing. It takes guts to do this type of stuff, and that's why a lot of people wouldn't do it.
The uncanny, the mix of the real and the unreal, has immense power over our imaginations. The fantasies you bring to life for your targets should not be bizarre or exceptional. They should be rooted in reality, with a hint of the strange, the theatrical, the occult, and talk of destiny, for example. You vaguely remind people of something in their childhood, or a character in a film or book. Even before Bursi...
So that's the thing, right? You got to make sure what you're projecting represents something that most people know, something that reminds most people of something, if that makes any sense, right? It could be that you have a father figure type of look, or a mother figure type of look, like, for example, which almost everyone does. You know, almost everyone can sort of like approximate how that looks like or how that behaves. But the point is mirror an archetype that most people have in their minds, right? For example, the archetype of evil is Hitler, right? The archetype of goodness is, for example, Buddha, right? So if you want to gain a following of spiritual followers, you just have to borrow the archetype. Sadhguru, for example. I'm not telling you guys to do this, but like if I look like that, if I start dressing like that, people will take what I said about spirituality a little bit more seriously, right? They'll take it more seriously. Just like if I try to sell you a business deal and I'm dressed like this versus me dressing like a business person, you're gonna take the business side more seriously, and you're not gonna pay attention to somebody who's dressed like that, who's trying to sell you insurance, right? Or who's trying to be president, for example. You can embody that archetype through either the way you dress, the way that you talk, or as well. Where if you want to borrow the archetype of a powerful person, you just learn to talk in a downward way. You know, you lower your nonverbals. You become more serious. That's usually the archetype of people of power, right?
Foucault heard Pei Pu's story, he had the uncanny feeling of something remarkable and fantastical in this normal-looking man. The secret to creating an uncanny effect is to keep it subtle and suggestive. Emma Hart came from a prosaic background. Her father, a country blacksmith in 18th century England. Emma